guys, my name is Vanessa Smedley and I am a painter, or resident weirdo, whatever you want to call me. Today we are going to do a watercolor of this cute little puffin right here. Because who doesn't want to learn how to paint a puffin, really? So let's get started. Let's do this. Okay, so today for paper we have Saunders Waterford in a CP knot, that's cold pressed finish, and 140 pound. This is on a block, so it doesn't need stretching, though I like to tape the edges because I like a nice crisp white border. The brushes I'm using, this is a number 6 Winsor and Newton Cotman round for the fine details. This is a number 12 Princeton Aqua Elite. The rest of these are Princeton Velvetouch, and this one is a number 8 round. 1-inch flat, 3/4 inch flat. I also use Pebeo drawing gum, which is also known as masking fluid. Do not use your good brushes for this stuff. It will absolutely obliterate them. Instead, use the cheapest brushes that you can find, and then even at that, you want to dip them into dishwashing liquid like Dawn mixed with water before you dip it into the drawing gum. Otherwise, you will not be able to use your brushes again and you'll be mad. This is the paint that I'm using, the brand of paint. This is Winsor and Newton Professional Series. I'm not going to list all my colors because I list them as I'm painting. And then I use a plain old spray bottle. Okay, I started out by masking off the white areas with Pebeo masking fluid. That was off camera. And then I did a mix of sap green, hooker's green, ultramarine blue, and a little bit of burnt umber for a darker green. And then I used sap green and lemon yellow for a lighter yellower green. Then I mixed some burnt umber mixed with Payne's gray to make a nice dark brown. I'm going to be doing this background as a wet on wet technique, so I am using clean water to wet the background prior to dropping in color. Here I begin dropping color into that wet background, and it spreads and mixes on the paper. I just drop in those different mixes and let them spread. You can see me very briefly use a spray bottle to keep the washes moving and mixing. Okay, I let it all dry, and then I decided that it turned out a little too dark for my liking, so I'm wetting it with clean water and then using shop towels to lift out a little bit of the color to make it a little lighter. Here I am mixing a thicker consistency of my previous mixes in order to use for the foreground for the moss. For the foreground, we want things to be darker and the background lighter, and that helps to create a sense of depth. And so I'm adding clean water here so that I can drop in the color. Since Mr. or Mrs. Puffin is sitting on an outcropping of rock, I start out with the Payne's gray and burnt umber mix and then work it darker up underneath his body to show a shadow. That's what's going to give this a 3D effect. Then I also start to drop in the different mixes of green and just let them spread. am taking the sharp back end of my brush and I'm going to be scraping the paint, which is going to be making highlights for the little pieces of moss. And it's going to also give some texture and make it look more realistic. And I'm taking off the unnecessary masking fluid here. Now I am mixing a light mix of Payne's gray, and we're going to start dropping that into his little face. And now I am mixing French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna together in order to make a really nice dark black. In watercolor it's hard to get a dark black, but these two colors mixed together make a really nice dark. I also really like using this mixture for black because you can either warm it up with the burnt sienna or you can cool it off with the ultramarine blue, and that helps your blacks to not be so flat. Because basically if you use just a flat black right out of the tube, it kind of deadens whatever it touches. It makes it a very flat, uninteresting area. And if you warm it up in some areas and you cool it off in other areas, it makes for a much more interesting kind of 3D look. As I'm painting the body, I'm using brush strokes that kind of mimic feathers here. You don't want to paint every feather because that gets very fussy and it kind of makes a very static painting that doesn't have a lot of movement. But if you use brush strokes that kind of just suggest that there's feathers there, it becomes a lot more effective and a lot more alive. Okay, here I am removing all the rest of that masking fluid to expose the white, and then I am dropping Payne's gray into the shadow side of his belly. Here I am definitely knocking back more of this intense white on these feathers because I do not want it to look like some sort of spiral lollipop, which is what it looks like right now. Now I am mixing up cadmium-free red and cadmium-free yellow to go into the beak color here. There's an area that I mix a little bit more of the cadmium red in so that I can have some variation in tone. And here I used a mixture of cadmium-free yellow and yellow ochre for this little yellow thing on the side of his mouth. I probably should have looked that up. Oh well, I'm not a wildlife expert. Here I'm using the burnt sienna and ultramarine mix to darken in his eye. And back to Payne's gray to do some more details on this white part of his face. we're adding more shadows with the burnt sienna and ultramarine mix, just going in with a darker mix. Getting a really, really darker mix underneath his wing here to like make sure that it recedes into the shadow, and that's what's going to give this such a three-dimensional look. Lifting out a little bit of a white line on his beak here. Let's darken those shadows on his backside. Continuing to knock back these white edges on these feathers that totally look like a unicorn horn now that I'm looking at it. I'm lifting off a little bit of lighter colored feather details here and there, and then going back in and darkening some of the shadows on the beak. Just going back in and adding some more detail in the moss area to finish that off. Okay guys, there is the finished painting. That's what it looks like dried and with the tape removed and signed. So there we go. Thanks for joining. And there you have it, a cute little puffin. I hope you enjoyed watching that as much as I enjoyed painting it. And don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe because it really does help to grow this channel. And I will see you next time.